It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
Honestly, the more poignant I try and make these intros, the blooming longer they are to get out, and often it's the ones I just thrash out that end up being the best ones when I listen back. Kind of like the podcast where you just hit record and let you and the guest chat. Welcome, this is Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. It's a podcasted reasonably often from a kitchen bench in Kingston, Auckland, New Zealand, except this one was down back home in Te Whanganui, Atara in Wellington, with someone who was on my immediate list of ideas for guests when this show was but a glint in my podcasting eye. Some ships proverbially passed in the night. We did try and do it last time I was down around Christmas, but this time Mr. Daniel Lemon approached me and said, Lewis, I shouldn't try and do his accent, that's terrible, I did that once in the podcast as well. Said, Lewis, I'd really like to get involved in your project, in that very endearing way for people who know Danny, that he would say something like that. And we did it at a beautiful old house up in Aro Valley, part of just a magical, you know, when you have a holiday or you have anything, you go out for a day or a night, or you have something planned in your life, and you know it's going to be good, but sometimes some of the chips don't fall your way. It might be bad weather, it might be an incident you didn't plan, it could be any number of things. Well, this trip to Wellington was just paced well, had a range of compelling activities, some great people along the way, and I met Grover. Well, damn it, I've oversold that. I'm not going to start again. I didn't meet Grover. I was in the same room as Grover, and it was pretty amazing. It was the same day I had podcasts with Danny. For those who don't know this guy, or for those who do rather, you'll know that Danny is heart and soul, an expression I once heard about someone else that I really love, because all I could come up with cliches, like he wears his heart on his sleeve, but I think heart and soul is better. So a conversation with him is always really lively, really connected, and that's indeed how it was on the podcast. And so it's just a fascinating episode. Like, I think a good podcast, conversation podcast for me is like a good documentary. Like, it could be about, the subject could be, you know, related to something you have no interest in. You might have looked at it and gone, oh, I don't really like reggae. Not really into DJ culture. Not that Danny's a DJ kind of DJ. But the point being is, it's just a compelling convo with a compelling guy. As I say, wears his heart on his sleeve. I also thought of another terrible cliche, which almost it fits, but it doesn't, because I think if you say someone's a survivor, it's loaded with all sorts of other connotations that I'm not meaning. I'm meaning that Danny, as he speaks about in the podcast, has reflected on some of the incidents in his life, both fortunate and unfortunate, and talked to people like professionals, as he mentioned, as well as good people around him. And the way I see it, just kept growing and learning and getting a sense of basically how this fucking human existence and interaction thing works, which is lovely. So I went from that conversation, as I say, had a few hours break, and then was in the presence of the creations of one of my favourite people ever, Mr. Jim Henson, and it was a celebration of his work and his life, and it was really well done, and the orchestra were great, and there were some nice touches, and Grover was in the room, as well as a whole lot of other Muppets, which I could list, because I could probably get to mastermind level in the Muppet knowledge department, but I don't know, it just felt like a Grover day. Danny in the morning, Grover in the evening, with two very good friends, stayed at the house, the Casa del Five, spent time with family. There was a pinball comp randomly on the Thursday, like it was meant to be. My gosh. And this all happened as an oasis of I actually had taken time off work because it just different things have been getting on top of me, but some of it's around dysfunctional people, and then it has me kind of going, what's a good person and what's a bad person? Is there universal definition. I think I decided that for me, good people don't hurt people and bad people do hurt people. And I originally was thinking bad people intentionally hurt people, but then I was thinking if you're just incompetent and don't have, sort of evil bone in your body, or even a slightly, not well-meaning bone in your body, you're just incompetent, well, that can hurt other people as well. Hello, working for people and places. Not my main workplace I talk about. Well, maybe one person. And then Bill Cosby got me further pondering that. He's nice to see him. Well, will he reflect on it? Someone that's sort of in denial and that much of a narcissist? I'm not sure. But either way, he will get what about 2.5% of what he deserves. And it made me think of a great quote from Richard Pryor's wife that I think really sums it up. Good people versus bad people. I can't remember where I heard it, what the context was, but apparently the Pryors, used to have the Cosbys over for dinner a few times, and there was judgments about lifestyle. You can probably guess which direction the judges was going in. And she always, Pryor's wife, always kind of reflected back. And, way before any of this, before Buress said anything in a club, I think we're talking the 70s, she said, well, I always knew Richard was dirty on the outside, but clean on the inside. And, where this is going, flip it around, Cosby was clean on the outside and dirty on the inside. You're going to enjoy this episode, folks. It's a great conversation. It was recorded on location. Sound quality is still pretty good compared to a lot of podcasts I listen to, but it's not up to my normal kitchen bench Kingsland standard with the condenser close to the mouth. We're in quite an echoey room. And hilariously, I didn't tell him Danny was sitting on possibly the worst thing to sit on with condenser mics, a big, huge vinyl seat that makes it sound like he's dressed in a PVC full-body costume, which perhaps he was. Enjoy, folks. Oh, like the show, Verbal Highs Podcast on Facebook, Verbal Highs on Twitter. Leave a comment if you could on the iTunes store. That'd be great. Lots and lots of great feedback still, always behind the scenes. I don't know what holds people back from this, but all I ask is public shares and pushing of the content. That's how we grow this thing.
This is Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs.
This house is amazing, Danny. I feel like we should have smoking jackets on or something.
That's great.
So, I'll introduce you. My guest, who actually was on the list, folks, from when this was but a sparkle in my eye of an idea, is Daniel Scotford, a UK-born music selector and collector who's been heavily involved in forwarding the Aotearoa reggae and general music scene since his arrival a few decades ago, which we'll chat about today. This is the most planned part of it, by the way. Founding member of noted DJ collective Roots Foundation alongside Fat Freddy's drop DJ Moo, Lemon is known for his authoritative knowledge of black music, primarily specialising in reggae and deep house and a smattering of soul. He's been involved in a number of projects emanating from this, including a reggae history exhibition at Te Papa Museum, a long-running radio show on Active, and countless sets of the proverbial killer not filler across the bars, warehouses, gardens and speakeasies of Wellington. How are you? It's good to see you. That's the main thing.
It's great to see you, Lewis. It's been a while since we've been able to spend some time together.
Can we start with the duck?
That duck just keeps on giving. That duck martyred itself for the cause, I tell you.
It was such a beautiful story. It was kind of like humanity came together on that bus, right?
It was great, yeah. It certainly did. I mean, I saw this duck fly into the bus and there's no way that I'm just going to keep driving. First of all, I needed to know whether it was alive or dead.
Yeah.
And so I stopped the bus and I legged it down the road. I yelled out down the bus, "I've just hit a duck!" And in fact, I mean, I did yell out the proverbial sort of "fuck a duck" when it hit, when it hit the bus. And then I told the passengers that that I'd hit this duck, and I was just going to go and check on it. And I found it in the road, and it was clearly concussed at the least. And I picked it up and I took it on the bus and I asked if anybody was a vet. if anyone on the bus was a vet. And there wasn't anyone on the bus who was a vet, but a woman put her hand up and she said, I live next door to a vet. She said, I'll take it to the vet. So we drove all the way to Karori with the duck on the bus.
You went off your scheduled route to get this duck?
Well, it was the last bus of the night.
Yeah.
I didn't go off the scheduled route,
Yeah.
but I just carried on going.
Yeah,
And the duck was on the bus and it was getting passed around. People were cooing and, you know.
Have you seen the passengers since?
I've seen the woman who took it. I've seen two of the passengers. One of them was the woman Juliet, who was featured in the newspaper story as the person who took the duck to the vet. But subsequently, the duck died, and she let me know the next day. And then I saw someone else on the bus who had been holding the duck for a few stops because she wanted to hold the duck.
And then I saw, you've always had this ability to be quite earnest about things and then have a great kind of, I called it gallows humour the other day attached to it because I recognised your stuff commenting handle and someone said 180 degrees, half an hour with some spices or something, and you said, I'm the driver and I think that's funny.
Yeah. Well, that was somebody, that's right. So the story is this, so
it's half hour on the duck, folks.
Yeah. So the story is that Juliet took the duck to the vet to be cremated.
Yeah.
That was in the story. The Dominion talked about the duck being cremated, and somebody put on the stuff thread post, cremated, I bet, with
lemon herb or butter or something,
coriander and with a bit of coriander and some herbs and 180 degrees. And a few people said that's not funny, and I put a post up saying, I think it's funny and I'm the driver.
Because under the barber shop handle, I wanted to talk about that as well, you seem to relish employment roles that involve interacting with the public, and because you had a stint as a barber before the bus driving?
I was barbering for a long time before I went on the buses, and I've been on the buses. I'm now in my 8th or 9th year.
Yeah.
And I was a barber for a long time.
Yeah.
And I barbered around town. And I had the plans to open up my own barber shop, and it was going to be called Joe Normal's Barber Shop. And I set up a Facebook page called Joe Normal's Barber Shop, which is pretty dormant now.
Yeah.
But I'll still call it Joe Normal's if I open up. In fact, I need to patent that name. But anyway, the thing is that I decided that I'd go bus driving for a while and try and save some money up to open up the barber shop.
Oh, right.
But I love
They caught the bug.
I love the driving so much. I wasn't expecting to be there for longer than 6 months, and this is often the case with a lot of drivers. They don't expect to be there for long term. But I'm now there, as I said. I've been there 8 or 9 years, and I'm very involved in the union.
I was going to say, I wanted to talk about that later. You've taken on an advocacy role on behalf of the other drivers.
That's right, yeah. I'm a delegate.
So what did you do when you first left school, Danny? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, actually, I mean, I used to do a lot of theatre work. I used to want to be an actor.
Yeah, right.
And I was a member of the National Youth Theatre in London.
Yeah.
When I was about 14 or 15, I got accepted into that. And I also was told that I would be accepted for RADA if I auditioned.
Wow.
I mean, I clearly at that young age I had a talent, and I had a passion for it as well. I did a lot of sort of TV commercials and bits and pieces. I was sort of kiddie talent, really. But I was going to go to drama school, but then I decided to knock it on the head because I thought I should learn a trade. And I tried to get into the army to be a carpenter. I mean, in England, there was, always an emphasis on having a trade.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole thing about trades. I mean, I'm still active in the UK. I'm not sure how active
Guilds,
it is now.
trades.
Guilds, that's right.
Bookbinding, 9 years.
Well, that was one of them that I looked at. Yeah. My dad had actually investigated the possibility of that.
You want to be an iPad repair, wouldn't you? Now, not 9 years of bookbinding. So what trade did you pick on up?
Well, I ended up working at Harrods and training as a window dresser.
Wow.
And I just worked for them for about 4 years, and then I went to work for Simpsons in Piccadilly, and that's another sort of top class store. The great thing about working for establishments of that sort of calibre is just the quality of the merchandise, really. And working at Simpsons, I also got to know a lot of the shirt makers in Jermyn Street, and so I used to freelance and doing shirt windows for shirt makers like Turnbull and Asser.
Did they make you dapper?
I was dapper then, I'm not dapper now, but I had a good sense of dress, and I had some lovely clothes, actually.
Surely some of that creative flair, acting, music, etc., that's got to fall into window dressing, right? Otherwise you couldn't, you wouldn't excel at that role, would you? It's got to be a creative process dressing a window, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, a whole sense of sort of aesthetics and appreciation of nice materials, and also, you know, they put me through a day release course at St Martin's College of Art. I wasn't a full-time student.
Yeah.
I mean, often if I've mentioned St Martin's College of Art, people have been impressed with it, and it is impressive. I mean, St Martin's College of Art is one of the main art.
Well, RADA's impressive, true.
RADA's impressive.
So would it be one of those
I never
things
actually did get accepted,
but
I was told that I would be.
Yeah.
So that's basically what people thought at the time. I don't know whether people would think that now. Although I must still say that I've sometimes thought about going back to acting. But, you know, my life has been very fluid.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of different things, and it's a really interesting path. We're all on interesting paths, but I certainly feel like I'm on an interesting path.
Have you had a life now of when people don't know about the window dressing, sort of silently walking past windows on Cuba Street, shaking your head at the...
Well, I did that a lot when I first came over. I tried to set up a window dressing business here, but that didn't work.
New Zealand's not quite...
It's not a major emphasis. It's not a trade like it's seen over in the UK or Europe, or particularly Japan. I mean, at the time that I was actually window dressing at Harrods, you know, Japanese windows were coming to the fore, and the Japanese aesthetic and their window dressing is beautiful, really.
And not to make you sound 150, which you're not, but I'd imagine that the department store was a bit more of a glamorous space than they kind of are now globally, right? Or is Harrods still a big thing? I wouldn't even know. Have you been back?
I went back 10 years ago, yeah.
Right.
I haven't been back since. I went back with a former partner.
So whereabouts in London did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Reading in London. I mean, so I did my secondary school in Reading, and then I went back to London. My granddad was from Bermondsey, and I went back to stay with him. I left home when I was about 15. I was living in Reading, and I got booted out, actually.
Yeah.
So I lived all over London, really. I was down in East London, and then I was in North London, and Stoke Newington and Manor House.
So you just had to learn how to grow up pretty quickly, as it were.
Yeah. As I think lots of us have done, really.
And is it that you haven't been back because of sort of the family, if it's not too personal, the family issues back then, or?
I'm estranged.
Yeah,
I'm definitely on my own.
Yeah.
And I think I'm really on my own, actually. My birth mother found me about...
But you surround yourself with good people all the time, so...
I know a lot of good people.
Yeah.
I think we do know good people.
Yeah. Sorry, you're saying your mother...
Oh, my birth mother found me about 20 years ago, and she's just outside of London.
Yeah.
We haven't cultivated the relationship that I might have hoped to cultivate, but at least I know who she is. But I'm still looking for my birth father, actually.
And that's an ongoing...
That's an ongoing thing, yeah.
Right.
I mean, definitely a lot of this, I mean, you know, looking back, having done a lot of work in the mental health sort of area, and a lot of study really on sort of adoption and, you know, I mean, definitely there's sort of been a pathology, if you like, I don't know if that's the right word, but from being adopted. And I think a lot of people, you know, I mean, like I was talking to a counsellor recently, and they said that adopted people are overrepresented in counselling and also suicide. And I think increasingly it's sort of, it's with research, it's been identified there are certain patterns of behaviour that often adopted people experience that maybe people who aren't adopted and have intact families don't experience. And so, when I look back retrospectively on my sort of history, I can see how a lot of it is related to my path in doing lots of different things and not feeling like I belong anywhere or trying to belong somewhere.
Maybe not wanting to put roots down certain times.
Or not being able to put roots down, really. And it's certainly sort of had an effect on my ability to sort of, in relationships. But I think, I'm not unique. But I think I've got a good handle on it, and I sort of understand what's gone on. But it's actually led me down this very sort of creative path, and also one of sort of union advocacy and mental health advocacy as well.
Well, I think the kind of examining and questioning and learning about all that stuff's probably been part of what's sort of kept you afloat, as it were, compared to maybe some people compartmentalise it for 40 years and then, it sort of dawns on them all at once what they've been going through if you follow.
Right. I mean, I crashed early. Some people crash a lot later. And so I've been very fortunate to be able to actually do a lot of work. And that is definitely part of the reason I stayed in New Zealand, because I would have probably fallen through the cracks in the UK. Yeah.
Easy to do in those big cities too, right?
Yeah, people do fall through the cracks. And I think that, at times I've been so sick in my earlier years that I think that if I hadn't have had access to the help, I don't think I would have got the help that I got here in New Zealand. And for that, I am eternally grateful.
Do you mean just... And by the way, I've listened... We're joking about how many podcasts we listen to now. The proverbial old men with the transistors in the corner of the room. I'm asking about all this stuff because I've found listening to podcasts, I think hearing other people talk about their experiences is like, so it's not sort of looking for titillation or whatever. It's just interested in the process. So, for me, I can't relate to adoption, but I can relate to absent father.
Sure.
Maybe the occasional weekend every few years with an ice cream or whatever. But what I sort of found is, just accidentally, I'm like, most of my close friends either have absent fathers and then when I've gone into circles of people who kind of are from those nuclear families, I'm so often like, this doesn't feel quite right. I'm used to my sort of people with a pillar missing, if you know what I mean, in a sort of a good way, in a sort of a kindred spirit way, but in a sort of I fucking get you before we even find out what it is that's similar.
Well, the thing is that actually what I really notice, and I've spoken to other people like this who have been, other people who are adopted, what I really notice is when you're around people who seemingly have intact families. I'm really highly alert to it and incredibly sensitive. And to that, and I really notice it, and I really observe it. And I know that this is a universal experience of people who have actually been separated or haven't had active sort of parenthood.
The dad thing I can't speak as a female, but the dad thing as a guy, sometimes I'll go for a while and be like, never had a dad around. And then a day it'll just be like, speaking of being able to bring on an emotion acting, if I get me on the right day with that, it's a sorrow that's quite different to other things.
It's a profound sense of emptiness that, I imagine if you're like me, I remember, listen, how's this? I remember barbering. And I remember certain older gentlemen coming in and I'd cut their hair and I'd be sometimes sort of roll off in some fantasy and pretend I was cutting my dad's hair. Or maybe you could be my dad.
You know what else? No one taught us how to tie a fishing knot or use a tool either. That's been a real problem.
Well, the fishing's not a problem for me.
No, that's gendered roles, That's right. I'm a great cook and a very good baker. So when did you come on over here?
My granddad was a baker, actually, all his life. Yeah,
really.
Saying that, but he was my adopted granddad.
That's a brutal trade for hours. They get up at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I think he did it all his life. He did it all his life, actually. Yeah, he was a a baker since he left school.
So can we, what's the word, can we give you a vintage? So you, how old are you, what year when you come out to New Zealand, and why New Zealand?
I'm now 50, I'm 59 in June,
yeah.
I'll be 60 next year.
Yeah.
And I came to New Zealand in 1982. I got brought out to roller skate, to teach roller skating for about 6 months. And then I got a job with Television New Zealand. And what enabled me to get the job with Television New Zealand was the fact that I'd done all this window dressing stuff. And I went into the art department, and I was working with a guy called Al Ford, who was from Bermondsey.
Yeah.
No, he was from Battersea.
Yeah.
And I remember I went there for a trial, and Al and I really got on well, and he just went to the boss. He said, he's really good, you should have him. And so I got a job with Television New Zealand.
It's the way it works, right?
Yeah.
Set dressing, and what were they making back then?
I was set dressing.
Close to home
Restaurant. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I worked on the sets for Close to Home.
So we need to back up after you just told me you nearly went to drama school, became a window dresser, and then you just brushed over the fact that you were a professional roller skater who was
semi-professional.
Yeah, but I
did a lot of marathon skating.
They paid you over.
People here had heard about me skating, and I'd done this major marathon over in the UK, and that featured on the front of the Observer magazine.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I lost that in the fire, along with other stuff. I'm going to be getting in touch with the Observer, because I'd love to have a copy of that cover, because it had me roller skating on the cover with the banner Observer behind me.
When was the last time you had skates on?
Good 20 years ago. I recently dabbled with the idea of training as a ref for the roller derby, but my shift work just didn't allow it. I did go along to the roller derbies for a while,
because there's a bit of theatre in that as well. It's sort of the best of both worlds, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a female sport, but a lot of the refs are male and female. But I thought this would be a great way to get back into my skating, but it didn't materialise. I did go along on a few occasions, and I was actually souping up my old skates, and it's still something I'd like to do. I mean, it's a great way to keep fit, and it's a lot of fun.
I don't know if you knew, well, of course you would have known. You would have been aware of where the rink was. I grew up just while Kilburney's skating rink was still a skating rink, while a rec centre, and they probably would have been skates. The likes
I think it's skating now.
Probably would have been skates. The likes of you would have laughed at, but you'd go and hire skates, and they'd have a DJ on Saturday afternoons. You know, it was like I just really enjoyed it.
I think that's still going, actually, that Kilburney rink.
It's a rec centre now, but it was actually a dedicated roller skating rink,
right,
with disc jockey, jukebox. Yeah.
Correct.
So you came out. How old did you say you were? Sorry,
I was 22, I think, 22 or 21.
So do you leave Thatcher's Britain?
I left 2 years after Thatcher got in. 2 years
after Thatcher.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 years too late.
I can remember I got offered this chance to come to New Zealand, and I can remember thinking, I really do remember thinking, initially it was going to be for 6 months, but I knew that if I could get to stay here, then I would. Yeah. And I did, and I have. And I feel very grateful for that. But I remember it was like a sort of a thing about being able to get out of the UK, and just, I felt quite isolated. I was separate from my family. And, I mean, I was young. I mean, this was a great opportunity. Yeah. And, but I can definitely remember thinking, I'm not really wanted here. So in England, and so I knew that when I left England that I probably wouldn't be going back if I could. And at that time, of course, when I got into New Zealand, it was a lot easier for people to get residency. And
I think once you got a job at TVNZ, you probably...
That's one of the things that gave me...
Yeah,
they sponsored me. And if I remember rightly. But I also had some pretty good references. I had a reference from a bloke who worked for the Prime Minister's Department, who worked for Muldoon. I'd met somebody, I can't remember, Helmsley, I think. And they gave me a reference as well. One of Muldoon's top men.
What for? What had you done for them?
I don't think I'd done anything, but I know that I got a letter. It was a
I know some people.
I knew his daughter.
You leave England, you go, how fucking small is this place? I've been here a few weeks, and the Prime Minister's assistant has given me a letter of recommendation to stay in the country. But so I was thinking...
He'd probably deny it, actually.
Because I was thinking I'll ask you about going back to the UK in a sec, but obviously the Wellington of then's very much changed compared to the Wellington now, right? Everywhere's changed. But when you did go back to the UK, did you go for a week or 2 weeks or a month, or was it a sort of a period of time when you did go?
We were away, I think, for about 6 weeks or 8 weeks.
Because what I wanted to ask there, sorry, just cut you off a little there, is did it feel like a better place than when you left, just in general terms?
Did London?
Yeah, London and England,
all
those years later. Did the country feel better than the one you left? As a country, not your experience, had England come out of that?
Well, actually, I went back and I sort of felt like I was going back as a visitor, really.
Yeah.
And it was a difficult time because I didn't see any of my family, my adoptive family.
Yeah.
I saw my birth mother, and it was really difficult going back to the UK after so much time and not actually seeing the people that I've been brought up with.
Yeah.
I enjoyed going back on lots of levels, but I found it very, very difficult. I mean, the fact that I didn't actually see my adoptive father when I went back was incredibly painful and still is, actually. But we were very estranged, and we're more estranged than ever.
I don't want to know how far to go with this, but he held on to whatever had happened around when you were 15 and didn't want to maintain that contact, didn't want to reacquaint down the track. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Well, we had contact when I left England for a while, and then he came out and visited. But I'd ended up in psychiatric here, you see.
Yeah.
And he came out and visited. He's a good man, but we just haven't been able to work it out.
So where does music fit in all of this, Danny? I will admit I did do a little bit of 2-3 page Google research on you. I listened to that really good chat with Kim Hill again. Oh, shivers! I just promoted something else. Oh, that's what's wrong. But anyway,
well, you can edit. Yeah, that's all right.
No, I'll leave
you
it
can edit it out.
I jest, and I was really fascinated about how, in and amongst all of this, it seems like music was the constant to hold on to, because you're one of the sort of original soul all-dayer crew, aren't you? Weren't you doing soul all-dayers back in the UK before you?
I wasn't a DJ, but
you were a punter.
Yeah. No, I was certainly very involved in the clubbing scene at the time.
But they were day parties from sort of dawn to dusk, weren't they?
Yeah, they start at midday and then go right through the night.
Right.
I used to go to some of those, and I talked to Kim Hill about those actually. They were that was on the interview, but I used to go to a lot of soul clubs. I mean, I was mainly involved in sort of jazz funk, and there was some really great jazz all-dayers, and there was Alexandra Palace. They used to have the jazz festival every year.
Yeah.
So I used to sort of check those things out. I wasn't really sort of so much into the reggae as such. Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed reggae, but it wasn't something that I was paying a lot of attention to, where other friends of mine were.
But it's still more ever present over there than growing up here, even if you're not. I hear you, but it's still kind of, it's coming out of doorways and so on, isn't it?
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, it's a part of the fabric of life.
Yeah.
It's definitely a major cultural force.
Were you?
Music and clubbing is a cultural force in the UK, and it has been since the late 50s, maybe earlier. I mean, the whole soul scene sort of came up in the UK from the sort of 1960s. People like, and into the 1970s, people like Robbie Vincent and Froggy, they were the people that sort of instigated all these sort of, and DJ'd at all these big all-day festivals, and people of all age groups, really.
Were you buying stuff then as well, or just...
Yeah, I was buying stuff. I used to buy a lot of stuff from a shop called Our Price Records.
Yeah.
They used to have a lot of jazz cutouts, and I used to buy. I can remember buying stuff like Idris Muhammad and a lot of Lonnie Liston Smith. I was right into Roy Ayers. Gil Scott Heron was somewhat a major influence on my early stuff.
Yeah. And did you manage to bring that all out here under the roller skating team.
I brought a lot of tapes with
yeah.
me. I didn't bring any vinyl.
Right.
I actually had a small collection of vinyl stolen. What happened is that I was supposed to go back to the UK after 6 months, but I didn't, and I left a whole load of records with a friend of mine, and she had her place cleaned out. This is at the time when people were going around and cleaning people's houses out.
Right.
They're turning up in a van and taking everything, including the carpets. That happened to her, and along with about 150 12s of mine at the time, which was mainly soul stuff and jazz funk.
And so you came on over here, and when did you even think about... I'd imagine you had to put a bit of work in sourcing the records you wanted once you got out here.
Well, I used to stay in very close contact with a good friend of mine in London, and so he was sending me radio tapes, and we were also doing compilations and bits and pieces, and it was quite amazing at the stuff that was available here in New Zealand at the time. A lot of people... There were specialist people importing stuff on vinyl.
Where are we? Early mid 80s?
Early 80s.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember names of the record shops, but I used to get tapes in from the UK, lots of radio tapes and lots of compilations that were put together by my friend Dave Wade, and we were in correspondence for years, and I used to make compilations of stuff made up, and so he would keep me informed of what was going on. Plus I used to get in copies of Black Music magazine. I used to get those mail order, and Black Echoes, and so they had charts, and so I used to stay in touch with what was going on through my friend Dave, who was a guy that I used to go clubbing with.
Yeah.
And
every British guy's got to have a mate called Dave. It's part of the cultural narrative. But,
he ended up going to live in Australia, and in fact I've recently thought I've lost contact with him, but I've been thinking about getting in touch. He was really very, very involved in the whole club scene, and actually he sort of guided me through a lot of it.
Interesting. So he immigrated to Australia after you came on.
Yeah, he emigrated to Australia about 5 or 6 years
He'll
later.
be one Facebook click away these days, man.
That's right.
That's the scary thing.
Yeah.
And so you, Wellington, the really vibrant cultural city it is now. Not to say it wasn't then, but you have, after all, come from one of the musical hubs of the world.
And London still is.
Right, absolutely.
London still is, isn't it?
Yeah. And what about finding music to go out and dance to and so on in early 80s Wellington?
Well, actually...
It was very loaded, the way I set that up.
Yeah. I can't even remember when Claire's sort of came about, but, the first thing that I did was... the thing is that when I came over, I was doing this promotion for roller skating, and I was playing all my music loud from the van. I was playing all these tapes, all this London sound. And I really thought that I was the bee's knees, because I was playing stuff that... I can remember playing Donald Byrd trumpet tracks and things like that, and really blaring it out on these horn speakers on the top of the van, and thinking that I was so cool because I was arrogantly... But actually
I've got a letter from Muldoon's assistant.
I was bringing all this music to people that people hadn't heard before. I took it for granted. I remember listening to commercial radio here and being absolutely appalled. And so when I was out there roller skating and hiring out the skates and coaching, I'd have this music blaring out, tapes from my mate Dave in London. I'd be playing radio tapes of Radio London or...
Generally favourable responses from Wellington Bods back then?
Yeah, occasionally. Initially I was in Auckland when I was doing the roller skating.
Oh, right.
So I was in Forest Hills. And so I would set up the van, set up all the speakers.
Hang on, we've got a dog that needs...
attention.
This is the beauty of the conversational podcast. This is all happening live, folks.
So I quite proudly sort of was playing music that I brought over from the UK or that I was sent from the UK on tapes. The van used to have a tape deck, And so
you kind of filled Wellington's void it didn't know it had for a sound system of sorts, because you had the van, you had the speakers.
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't think of it like that.
Yeah.
But I certainly thought that I had something to bring to people. I really remember at that time thinking, people have got to hear these sounds that I brought over from London, you know, because I was really missing it, and I was in touch with Dave. We were sending packages to each other every other week, and as well as that, we'd do these vocal cassettes. You know, we'd have a discussion with each other. So, and then we'd fill it up with music, or then he'd make some, and he'd talk about bands that he'd been to see, and then he'd play a track. It was our own sort of, for want of a better word, our own sort of podcast, if you like. From that time. It was a tape exchange.
Because there's an oft-told tale, which I'll tell again, because that speaks sort of volumes about the attitude of commercial radio, which is a real shame. You went with a sort of an idea to, it was probably ZMFM or something at the time, and they said that was better suited to the people of Porirua, didn't
That's
they?
exactly right, yeah.
I mean, that's not uncommon anywhere globally, that sort of, those sort of attitudes about...
It was a diabolical attitude, and I was quite mortified, actually. And then I turned on to Radioactive. I can remember listening to Mark Cuby's Uncut Funk show, and that was about 1983-84, and I thought, I've got to be involved here, and that's where it started. I can remember...
It's good you tuned on in when that was on. It could have been a...
Yeah, well, I can remember Mark playing some Parliament and thinking, wow, this is great, somebody's playing this here. And that's when I first became aware, really, that other people were... There was a pocket of people here that were really seeking out the same sort of stuff that I was seeking out.
Yeah.
And it was Mark Cuby, actually, who happened to be the producer for Kim Hill's show.
Yeah.
But I can remember his Uncut Funk show, and it was Parliament. And that just sort of set me alight, really. And I just thought, because I really wanted to get involved in broadcasting.
Did they have a reggae show?
I think they had at the time I got involved, there was a show run by a guy called Steve Hannafy.
Yeah.
But I didn't sort of get into doing the reggae show until about 1986-87. Initially, when I got involved with Radioactive, I was running soul stuff. I was playing a lot of stuff off the tapes.
Yeah.
And I was playing records that I'd either been sent in from London or that I'd been able to pick up here. But a lot of my shows at the time were actually played off tape, based on the stuff that I was receiving from Dave. And in fact, when I first started DJing out, about 1988, I was playing a lot of stuff off tape deck as well as on a turntable. I was mixing them both up.
Amazing, right?
And so I'd be running a lot of stuff off tape as well as. Well,
if you want to have the best stuff no one else has got, whatever delivery medium
whatever
possible,
format,
right?
Whatever format, that's exactly right. And it was great to see Martin Pepperell a few years ago start to run nights just with cassettes. I just thought that was fantastic. And you know the thing about the Fire?
Damn hipsters. Sorry, Martin.
But this is one of the things about the Fire. I mean, I lost. The main thrust of the conversation about the Fire has been records, but actually, I lost boxes and boxes of cassettes going way back to the mid-70s. And that is an absolute tragedy, because nowadays people are actually transferring it onto digital, and I would have loved to be able to pass some of that stuff on to transfer it onto digital, or do it myself. I mean, I'm not set up to do that, but I certainly had a really great tape collection of reggae, soul and jazz compilations and radio tapes. A lot of the radio tapes that I lost in the Fire.
You've got there of your own volition, and I certainly was going to ask a few things about it. So, Danny, I've realised we're sitting here, speaking of Radioactive, being old Radioactive kind of chums and friends, wider than that. So we're probably still sitting here thinking in a Wellington kind of music scene context, but a lot of my listeners won't actually know what happened to you with your record collection. In 2014, and it's sort of such a tale of, I don't know whether not really religious. It's almost like it's of biblical proportions, you know. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, what you had amassed And then what happened? If you don't feel like you've already discussed it enough, can you sort of talk about what happened to your collection?
Well, I mean, it was in storage. The majority of it was in storage, and there'd been this big storage fire at Kilburney, and I got a call at 7 o'clock in the morning to say that it was a big fire. I had about 60 boxes of records in storage, along with lots of clothes, all my photographs, all my personal artefacts, actually. Because I moved around a lot, I couldn't actually keep a lot of this stuff with me. So at home with me, I had maybe about 1,000 records, but the rest of it was in storage. And this fire occurred. It was an arson. It wasn't an arson aimed at me, it was an arson aimed at somebody else. But my storage locker was just a few lockers down from where the seat of the fire started. But there were 200 lockers, and I think 200 lockers went up. And obviously I'm not the only person who lost a lot of stuff, but for some reason the record collection seemed to become quite symbolic of everyone else's loss. There were a handful of other people whose losses were covered, but the record collection loss seemed to gain a lot of publicity, and as I said, it became sort of symbolic of people's loss.
Well, I thought about that more widely. You know, initially I was just totally worried for you, and then other stories filtered through. Some of the people I knew, some I didn't. But the main thing that dawned on me was like, shit, you don't store some cutlery set you bought at Briscoe's 6 months ago in storage, do you? You store all your, what I call your kind of forever box stuff,
That's
don't you?
right. That's it.
And then for another person to be involved who was actually, from what I gather, not even that good at the criminal act that they set out to do, and that they managed to torch the whole place. How do you sort of deal with this whole package? I'd imagine it's the classic 4 stages of grief, like any other grief in one's life, sort of disbelief, shock, anger.
Well, I mean, I was very fortunate. I mean, a lot of people stepped up to really support me, and you know, I mean, that will always stay with me. And then there were some other creative projects that developed. But recently, I in the last year, I mean, I've been extremely involved with my union work. But recently, I have found myself going through another stage, which is that, I mean, there'd been that really brilliant poster developed by Philippa O'Brien and Sam Brown, and actually, what a great art piece that is. And but I haven't been able to bring myself to sort of look at it.
No, you offered me one, and I just it's beautiful, but it's beautiful, but it's I could see how you wouldn't really want to.
Yeah, I mean, but that's only something that recently developed. I mean, recently I just there were a lot of burnt records that I kept hold of, and I actually just got rid of them. And so it is a process. I'm well aware that there are lots of terrible things going on in the world. You know, that at the end of the day, it's just a record collection, but it's still nevertheless a big loss. I mean, a lot of work had been put into it. It was a curated collection, and it meant a lot to a lot of people. And I think that's
it was people who know your. I feel like I'm rubbing salt into this, Danny. People who know your. People, there's good words in this. People who know you and exactly what you're about. It was kind of your life's work up until that point.
Yeah, that's right. And well, it had been. Yeah, I mean, it was the one constant, if you like. It would have been the one constant, and I wouldn't wish this experience on any record collector. I mean, other record collectors have had this. I mean, Top Knot lost some stuff, but I know of people overseas who lost major collections as well. Yeah. And in fact, a good friend of mine, Ray Herford, he lost, and Ray Herford is probably one of the most important archivists in reggae in terms of actually, I mean, he used to publish the magazine Small Axe and More Axe. Yeah. And his place got burgled, and he got torched as well. And so he lost, and he was very good friends with Prince Farai. and he lost a lot of dub plates, original dub plates from that time.
Is this historically, or where it's sort of is this?
This happened about just a couple of years before mine did, and it was just in discussion with Ray that I'd actually sort of discovered that, and Ray's contribution to reggae world, if you like, far outweighs anything that I'm ever likely to do. I mean, his reggae journalism and his archiving and interviews of reggae personalities and producers over the years, his magazines, his fanzines are a linchpin to gaining sort of knowledge on the development of reggae culture in the UK and worldwide.
Kind of like you've been one of here for New Zealand.
Well, I mean, that's a very nice thing to say, but I haven't done it alone.
Yeah, you haven't. But
I've had people that have helped me collect stuff from overseas. I was linked up with a brilliant collector, also from the UK, who lives here, called Nigel Parrott, and Nigel was dealing directly with Yabby U and people like that in the mid '80s from Jamaica, and so through him I was able to actually sort of get a lead in, if you like, and we used to do a lot of ordering together, and he was far more of an authority than I was.
I'll just touch back on something because it relates to what I just expressed to you, and I often feel like, well, not outsiders, wrong term, but people who haven't been involved with something like student radio don't understand why we bang on about student radio all the time. But for me, turning up when I did, 93, 94, initially as a arguably overzealous subcard prize winner.
You had great presence on the radio, Lewis. You were great, honestly.
Still do, Daniel, still do. My point being is, meeting the likes of people like yourself and Moo, and the list could go on. Just all the slightly older people I met up there, who, if I just kind of shut up, if they gave me some advice about music, coming back to your role in reggae music in general here and stuff, but there's a real thing with somewhere like Active where that sort of knowledge and passion and just genuine interest, and I'd say whānau kind of I kept visiting that place for 15 years after I left it, just a really important part of how kind of music is spread through Wellington, right? But coming back to the fire, and I need... Is there an atheist take on biblical as an expression? Where it was also the atheist take on
apocalyptic.
No, something more positive than that. Was that you've got this Muppet who does what he did, but you also saw the best side of humanity come out in that records started to arrive from all over the world for you, didn't they?
They did, actually. People, that's exactly right.
And I'd imagine just those boxes turning up was something before you opened them, right?
Yeah, I mean, people just wanted to do what they could, and I really got to understand that my sort of passion had actually had quite a significant impact on people, because actually it was almost like people empathically were feeling the loss of this collection. It meant something to people. I mean, it was, and I felt really quite honoured and humbled by that. It was quite a leveller, to be quite honest. I mean, I always just kept on doing what I was doing, which was DJing, and absolutely passionate about knowing about the people who make the music, and linking up with people, like-minded people, house people, reggae people, soul people, and I think the fire just sort of thrust everything into the limelight. It was a real leveller, and I think people really just showed their appreciation for what they'd actually been able to share in the past, and that was really gratifying, actually. And it's still gratifying. I mean, you know as well as I do. I mean, any DJ. But, you know, actually being able to bring your take on music to people and have people appreciate that and go away with a sense that they've listened to something that's actually at a deep level that really matters and means something. You know, it's a privileged place to be in. And, you know, that's the difference between listening to, you know, when I listen to a DJ, I want to get a sense that they really know their music and that they're bringing something to the table in terms of their sort of passion for it. And there's plenty of people around like that all over the world.
Well, I think you said something sort of quite profound and humble somewhere along the lines, the way I picked up, that you see yourself, you know, you didn't say this, but this is my addition to it, in a world where we've got DJs who like throw cake into the audience and surf on people on rubber rafts and so on, the super DJ. You said you've only ever seen yourself as a conduit for was that the right word you used?
Conduit.
For the music?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, it's a spiritual experience. Yeah. I mean, definitely some of those Roots Foundation nights, it was hypnotic for me to be playing. I mean, it was such a, you know, the sort of acuity that we'd bring to some of those sets was quite remarkable. Yeah. And to be a part of that was actually quite incredible, really. You know, Core is the consummate DJ. Yeah. And, you know, he's... and you know, some of those sets that we ran, just seeing the response from people, and just being able to bring that quality of music to people at that level, being in that zone. I can remember just playing tracks that I would just be chanting to. I'd just be completely hypnotised by being involved in the process, and that's a real honour. You know, it's a spiritual experience. Absolutely. It truly is a spiritual experience.
And then again, for listeners who are familiar with both Danny Ryan Wellington or Roots Foundation or any of that, it's probably an obvious statement, but you know, U4 definitely. Not saying it was the initial, you know, where do things start, etc. But where does the quote unquote Wellington sound sort of emanate from? The sort of Roots backbone, you know. I can't think of, you know, well, you know, it's a pretty significant
impact
collective of DJs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Imagine if you'd been into, I don't know, yodeling records or something. How would Fat Freddy's drop sound, or you know,
terrible.
We'd have
I sometimes think about, you know, I remember I did
very, very serious. Terrible, Lewis. Terrible.
Well, I remember this. How's this? I remember I did an interview that was published in a book, and it was an interview about collecting, and I talked about, and at the end of it, I said, "Thank God it's not train spotting or trains that I'm into," and you know, people have said to me, "What have the UK people? What has Britain brought to the world?" And I said, "Morris dancing." And thank God it's not Morris dancing. Thank God it's music at this level, you know, because actually it's not only the music, it's the people that come with it. It's the great people that come with it, and actually just seeing that energy of people wanting to have that knowledge and that experience of these great productions.
Your particular way of being enthusiastic about that music as well is very infectious. That's right, and people want to have a part of that, and then if they go down that path, want to pass it on as well. Kind of coming back to the thing around active as well. To the business end of the fire, you are dealing with other human beings who were involved in your horrible misfortune. So I'd imagine you have to process both your attitude and approach to the offender. And then also to the storage company. Have you just sort of let go and for your mental health, or what's been the process? I think that's an important thing to ask.
It's a good thing to ask, because, actually. I mean, certainly. I mean, it's sort of unfathomable to me that somebody would actually set light to a building where people's property is so, you know, prevalent, a storage place, but. Yeah, I've never actually felt that. I've never really felt huge anger towards the person that did it. But I mean, I've been pissed off. But But yeah, maybe I've still got to process it. That I don't know.
No, maybe you've just got the right approach to looking at it. That's why I asked.
Well, that right approach, I think, has come through the support of other people as well. I mean, initially it was just a huge, I mean, still is actually this incredible sense of disbelief when I think about the quality of the stuff that got lost in there, in my collection. And, you know, I've set about trying to replace some of that stuff, and these days some of that stuff is extremely expensive. So what it's meant that I've done is I've actually sort of become a lot more focused on what I'm buying now. And, you know, for example, I've really focused on rebuilding my Augustus Pablo collection and focusing on building up my original pressings of his 7-inch singles. I lost a complete collection of Augustus Pablo albums, and a lot of those albums now are £50, £60. And so it's a very gradual process. So what I've done is I've decided to just focus on the 12-inch singles and the 7-inch singles, which in turn are expensive, but I've become very...
I looked at it from the other end of social media and went, oh goodness, he's starting again.
Well, of course, I didn't lose everything. I had a lot of stuff at home. I did have bits and pieces at home, some of the key stuff, but there was a lot of key stuff in storage. But all the Augustus Pablo Rockers 12-inch singles I had at home with me. But all the LPs were in storage, and that I think that was about 35 or 40 albums that Pablo put out.
I think
they all went.
They'll make their way back to you if as you see those prices, and then something comes on up, or someone who you know will alert you to.
And that is
find,
exactly what happens. Yeah. That is exactly what happens. And in fact, in some cases, I mean, Junior Dan, who was Augustus Pablo's bassist for the Rockers All Stars, I mean, at the time of the fire, you know, Junior Dan heard about the fire. He just sent me loads of stuff that he'd done.
Wow. And you'd had contact with him before? No?
Yeah, I've had a lot of contact with Junior Dan over the years. I mean, he's actually someone that you know, if I can get myself organised like you have. I mean, I'm so impressed with your podcast project. But
do you remember I turned up with one part missing, and you had to drive me back to where I was staying, and we drove back. So not that organised, but anyway. Yeah.
But the thing is that actually Junior Dan is one of the key people that I'd like to interview, and I would like to tell his story.
That's a beautiful gesture he made, you know, reaching out and giving...
Well, it was him and Ray Cheddy from the UK Wackies. Yeah. They really sent me a lot of music to replace a lot of the stuff that I'd lost. And other people did the same, but Junior Dan is such a key part of that whole Rockers sound, and to actually have that kind of friendship is very humbling.
You got it replaced from the source.
Essentially, some of it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's still producing music. I mean, he's doing a lot of work, and he's still producing albums as well. So he's somebody that, you know, in the future, I actually anticipate that I will have a website. Good. And I will have interviews with key people, or the people that I see as being some of the key people involved in reggae or house culture, dance culture. And I will do those interviews myself.
Well, as I said, I'll help you out. And also, you know, gear like this is so much more easily put into our hands these days than even when I first met you. So, you know, get a little set up. You can even do stuff through Skype on phone. That's quite good quality these days.
Yeah.
There's different ways to do it. I was going to ask Danny, speaking about my radio manner, I really enjoyed who you are. Totally used to come across in your delivery of the Roots and Culture shows, but I have a funny feeling you're not doing those anymore. I was just going to ask, are you doing any radio? I think you should be doing radio.
Well, radio, I mean, if I was to talk about my first love, I think radio. I mean, I would love to be doing routine radio. I just don't have the time. I got involved with Rough Peel when they set up their radio station. I'm very good friends with Paul, and Rough Peel have been extremely good to me. I get all my records sent there because I was losing stuff in the mail from overseas. But I've got a good relationship with Rough Peel, and with internet broadcasting the way that it is now, once I've got time again, I would like to go back and actually get back involved in that, and maybe be doing podcasts. And I've never been known for my technical expertise.
Well, a podcast could be essentially you learning to press the same 2 or 3 buttons you did at Active. If you say you didn't have a lot of technical expertise, and it could be a podcast of you running tunes at home, turning a mic on every now and again. They could go up as well as the interviews.
Right.
So you have your own Danny Lemon online stream.
Yeah. Well, I know that Paul has archived all the shows that I've got, and I think they're on the Rough Peel website. I really sort of need somebody to sort of guide me through that. But I will get back involved with Rough Peel, because I'm very keen to support Paul and his projects. I think it's amazing what he's achieved in actually setting up the shop after losing all his stuff in the in the Christchurch earthquake.
Right. Yeah.
He was managing Real Groovy. He was running the Real Groovy in Christchurch, and he lost it in the earthquake. He lost a lot of stock, but he's managed to salvage that. And Rough Peel, I think, really, as all the independent record shops deserve support. Well, that's the one that I'm aligned to.
They're doing you don't have to do a PhD to know this, Danny. By the way, you're the first person who's ever introduced me to someone else's doctor. I had to look around and check it was me you were talking about. But anyway, part of my study touched on.
You've earned that title.
I have,
and I think it's a respectful thing that people should acknowledge.
It's funny how the something you plan these paths in your life, and this I never ever thought in a million years I'd end up that far in academia.
Are you teaching? Are you lecturing?
A lot of stuff around sound and audio, how to make my students have due when I'm back.
Yeah.
I basically walk into this first year paper and I say, okay, there's 2 main areas to what I'm teaching you. They do 8 weeks of audio, 8 weeks of digital media, 8 weeks of video, and I do the audio 8 weeks. And I say, okay, so in column 8 I'm teaching you storytelling, how to tell stories with just sound, which is different to other storytelling. And then if they think sound's old-fashioned to tell stories with, I say, well, any screenwriting film school around the world worth its salt, you start off making stories with audio, because it's theatre of the mind and all of that.
Yeah. And
the second part is, this is how to use Pro Tools. This is the tools to get the story that's in your head and put it all together. So the punchline of that is their main assessment, which is due Tuesday I'm back or Thursday I'm back, is a 3-minute radio doco, which the topic had to be approved by me. It had to have a strong journalistic angle, and the overall topic for all of them was food. So I'd be really interested to see where they go with it. I wanted to ask you about another person that really made an impression on me in my early days at Active, not only based on their personality and outlook, but their patience for me, a grommet turning up there from the suburbs, and that's Moo. And I just wanted your reflection on how far he's taken Fat Freddy's drop, because I always knew he was talented, but I didn't know it was going to become global juggernaut talented. I'm not, of course, in any shape, way, form or doubt, but Wellington just didn't seem geared up like that, did it, back then? Are you proud?
Well, I'm always proud to talk about Moo.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a very close working relationship.
He's a superstar, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
musically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did, a lot of my very first early sessions, I got Moo on board to do the sound or to DJ with me. And, we used to run these sessions called Moo and Lemon's Heavy Beat. And I don't really see much of him now, but I think it's great what he's achieved. And I'd love to see him more. I'd love to. I certainly feel very proud to have had that association with him. And he was one of, I think Roots Foundation, that collective that came together. It was a moment in time, and we really had a special thing going on. And from that, Moo got involved with setting up other projects, and we all had other projects going on. And out of that, I'm not sure. There was some other things that Moo was doing, but Fat Freddy's drop, Moo came from Roots Foundation. I'm not sure if Fat Freddy's drop came from Roots Foundation, but certainly I think Roots Foundation and a lot of the music association that Moo and I had together has certainly sort of rubbed off on him, if you like.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And the deeper stuff I hear, kind of freaky Maurizio techno records, and then kind of tubby echoes and stuff.
That's right, yeah.
But I think also it's what you would reflect on the city. It's been your home so many years now. Do you think that, and you can tell me if I'm completely not barking up the right tree here, but a whole bunch of stuff happened kind of late 90s, early 2000s that really quite changed Wellington's trajectory, right? You know, the film industry, the rise of all that sound.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. It was just like this whole sort of planetary alignment sort of business, you know.
Really
lots of things were happening.
Yeah.
And, you know, I knew at the time that what we were involved in and what we were doing, I knew in terms, because I was in contact with a lot of people internationally, what we had going, you know, some of those nights that we were running, I mean, we could have developed that into being something on the global stage. There's no doubt about it. And actually, Fat Freddy's Drop did do that. It went, you know, Moo took it in a different direction. But I have no doubt that that we could have continued to develop if other things sort of hadn't materialised. I knew that at times some of our nights were as good as anything you'd get anywhere in the world, and that was happening right here in Wellington. But it wasn't just that. You know, I mean, there were lots of DJs like Ben Stevens, you know, lots of really great DJs running stuff. The thirst for knowledge here.
Funky Monks all had really good take on that.
Yeah, well,
that pocket of music.
Kyan was down here, and you know, there are various influences, but also people had this great thirst for knowledge, so they were working really hard to find out what was going on overseas, and to, you know, there were record shops bringing in stuff based on people's ordering preferences, and then they'd become aware of that. And so there was this moment in time that lasted 3, 4, 5 years, maybe 6 years, and it was just.
Do you think it sort of veered on off again? Like with 5 or 6 years, a sort of real set of halcyon days, and yeah.
Well, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, maybe I don't know. I mean, people had projects that were developing, and then, you know, we were all involved together for a long time, and then we weren't. So, but I know for those few years there was just a really very special thing and great energy going on here, and it was something that we knew about, and actually I always was telling people about overseas. And I know that for a short while Wellington was a sought-after destination for DJs because they knew that the people would appreciate their sets, and I think that happened.
Well, I think when Stacey Pullen turned up to Metro and you had a white towel draped over your shoulders and you were yelling, "Kill us with it, Stacey, fucking kill us with it," that one punter alone is probably reason to go, hang on, where am I? What city is this?
Who's this nutter? Oh my God, I've
forgotten one of my most endearing memories of you.
I've forgotten all about that.
Yeah.
Kill us with it,
Kill us with it, Stacey. Fucking kill us with it! I probably shouldn't do your accent in front of you. Which no one can do, by the way.
That was great. Yeah, kill us with it,
and
Stacey.
I didn't know that you were singing, is it Forward a Channel 1?
Forward down a channel.
Forward down a channel 1. I didn't know that was actually the lyrics you were singing one day when I walked into the active studio, and it was more like a kind of Manchester United football chant until you actually named the record in press about 10 years later as your favourite tune.
Yeah, well, that was one of the very early tunes on the Roots Foundation. We'd always sign on with that, and since then, and actually, just in this last couple of months, it's just been repressed. So,
yeah.
But it's always been a sought after tune.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of people. Right from the early days, I remember playing up in Auckland early on, and I can remember giving out set lists to people. I used to type them up.
That was my third. Was those brilliant hand typewriter type set lists?
Yeah.
If anybody's a nightclub at 3
a.m. If anybody's got one of those, I'd love to have a photocopy of it. Because
someone will have one in their box of.
Yeah, I used to have a little logo at the top, and it used to say Lemon's Choice or something like that. And I'd put a set list down, and I'd give it out to people at the nights that I was putting on.
Yeah.
And that way, people could actually, and I'd say, the set list wouldn't be in order, but you can expect to hear these tunes tonight. And that Forward Down a Channel 1 was always the tune that I signed on with.
And then no one... I was just thinking, then no one had Google or any idea of how to get them.
No.
But at least they had a list of...
Yeah.
No, it was... Yeah, I should actually have a look. It might be the sort of thing I've held on to one, because I have a distinct memory of you giving one. Hey, another curious thing around Jamaican music and...
How's that for fanaticism, mate? I used to love being able to bring that knowledge to people.
Would you have it any other way, really? The other thing, and it's not particularly you, and certainly not in a podcast, but I've asked a few other... Jamaican music aficionados this in the past. You've not been to Jamaica, to my knowledge. Is it somewhere you'd like to go? Surely that makes some sort of common sense.
It is actually somewhere I'd like to go. During the 80s, it felt like it was needed to be a pilgrimage. It was like a pilgrimage, but it never happened. And
do you mean to you or to bunch of people? Pilgrimage for you?
For me, it felt like I have to go there. I will still go there, I'm sure, but it doesn't feel like such an urgent issue, especially with where the internet is now. Stinky's been over there a few times. Jimmy got married over there, and I know quite a few people in Jamaica, and I'd love to go over and visit and spend. I'm definitely interested to go and spend time with Mitchie at the Rockers International shop. So it used to feel like a spiritual pilgrimage, and that's maybe changed, just levelled out a little bit more as I've matured. But it is something that I'm sure that I'll do in time.
I don't know how you'd do that, or who you'd take, whether it would be on your own or whatever, but just while it springs to mind, a guy I was actually buying reggae and dancehall sevens from when I lived in Melbourne, Jesse I, who you've probably come across.
I know Jesse, yeah.
Great guy, really, did a lot, helped me a lot in Melbourne, etc. He's doing sort of guided tours. That sounds cheesy, but he's taking people who haven't been to Jamaica before over for group kind of music.
That's right, yeah.
Based things through PBS.
Yeah.
I thought that'd be an interesting pilgrimage. He's been welcomed right into the fold there. I think he's been quite a number of times. I remember when Jesse started out, and I mean, I had a lot of correspondence with him in his early days, and I think it's just great. He's just kept on doing what he's doing, and I think it's really impressive. Well, it reminded me of you guys, because I went over there once on holiday before I lived there, and I probably my idea of reggae was, again, being screamingly young at Roots Foundation parties, some of the early ones, and so it would have been, I think it was the last year of uni, 96ish, and I went to a reggae night in Melbourne, and I left. This is a good story about Jesse, because he wasn't around then, and I went, well, we've got it pretty good in Wellington. But then, when a bunch of us moved over there, a bunch of Kiwis around the same age moved around the same time, and Fee, who you know very well, ended up flatting with me, and then my friend Aaron, who you'd no doubt recognise or remember if you saw him, they both went to a reggae night that I couldn't go to. This is a few years later, and I was expecting them to come back with similar tales to me, but it was one of Jesse's early Chantdown nights, and they came back and said... And Fee's since got really involved with them and is playing a lot over there as well. But Jesse, again, it's never one person, one collective, one thing, but he's done a lot through passion in Melbourne for good reggae and dancehall music.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Hey, how long, if you had to guess, do you think we've been talking? Are you being held prisoner now?
I'd say we've been talking for at least an hour.
5 minutes, Danny. Unless I do have a wee list here. I guess just in closing, because I know it takes up a lot of your time now, talk about the sort of agitating for the union side of your bus driving job. Just a few sort of tidbits as to what motivates you and what the process is in being a union, because unions feel increasingly marginalised, in the last decade or two. So.
They certainly have been marginalised. I mean, there's been
neoliberalism.
That's right. I mean, there's been active sort of campaigns against unions and actually disinformation about the role of unions. I'm actually very, very involved with the bus drivers' union, the tramways union, and we've got a major dispute on at the moment regarding the loss of a lot of our drivers. We're losing about 400 drivers. due to the regional council restructuring the bus services here.
You did put your phone on silent, did you?
That's not my phone.
That's
actually.
right.
Yeah. Will you be able to edit that out?
Yeah, I'll just leave them in. It's all part of the live experience.
Oh, right.
Fly on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my role, I'm a delegate. I've been a delegate for about 3 or 4 years, and I'm very close to the executive for the Tramways Union. We've got a few legal cases going on at the moment. What's happening is that, you wanted to know about my motivation, and it all ties in. You know, the thing about the music is it all ties in. We're talking about a social
justice.
Social justice.
Yeah.
You know,
Equality.
what's going on in the world. I mean, what's happening in America at the moment? What's happening to black people in America at the moment? And the increase in racism, the fascism being legitimised all over the world. This is an extreme concern, and that goes directly to the core of the work that I do. I mean, I'm no great shakes, don't get me wrong. But, you know, I'm here, I work with the bus drivers, I love the job, I love working with the public. And the thing is that the bus drivers, everybody, whatever they're doing, everybody has the right to good advocacy.
Yeah.
And over the years, I feel like I've certainly taken on this role, I feel like I'm on a big learning curve at the moment in terms of actually diplomacy, negotiation, mediation, and activism as well, union activism. I mean, there's no doubt that there's going to be industrial action coming up, and the public need to be aware that it's not the bus driver's fault.
Yeah.
This has actually come about through neoliberalist thinking,
Yeah.
and this whole privatisation of public assets. if you
Absolutely.
like.
Is the Transport Union quite a strong one in the scheme of things? I know some unions are, on a deathbed these days. Is the Transport Union a solid union?
We're the Tramways Union. Sorry, that's
right.
Let's do that.
We'll get
again.
you out of here shortly.
Yeah, no, the Tramways Union is a strong union.
Yeah.
The thing is that we have the backing of a lot of unions. The CTU, the Combined Trade Unions of Richard Wagstaff's the president. That used to be the post occupied by Helen Kelly before she passed away. Richard Wagstaff's taken up. He's a great ally of the Tramways Union. There's no doubt that with the CTU backing us, and with the facilities that they've got in terms of actually generating awareness and also their lobbying power, that we've got a lot more strength on this. I think it would be difficult. We would be fighting a very, very difficult battle if we were fighting on our own. But I think the thing is, what's really key here is that the issue that the bus drivers here are facing actually speaks to all the issues that workers throughout the workforce.
Well, it speaks to employment rights, that, as you say, have been eroded, being more adhered to, and the voices of, I guess, the advocates for the workers being heard, isn't it?
There's been this constant attack, especially in the last 9 years under the national government, this constant attack on workers' rights, increasing poverty, increasing people being able, a decrease in people's ability to access healthcare. This has to change. Fortunately, we had a change of government, and they are an ally of the unions. We have close contact with people in the government.
Yeah.
We have to do what we can to reverse this. Everybody needs to be alert to what's going on, and there'll be lots of conservatives that would be saying that I'm just hysterical or alarmist, but I can tell you now, this is a very, very significant battle.
Quick tale of mine observation through teaching that's related to it. You just you made me think about something when you said people need to know their rights as workers. Is I noticed that my young students' idea of rights for them are quite different in one particular regard, and it baffles me that they go through business-based university system. The university is now a business as much as it is government funded. They rack up a really large loan. They specialise in my degree, say in radio or television or journalism or whatever, and then rather than like the apprentice system that we started off with at the beginning, that may have been a pittance, they're expected to intern for free for the first period of their employment. After paying to become experts to go and work in these big media companies.
Free labour, that's right.
And that's a direct result. I could go on for days. That's a direct result
We
of all
could
those
talk
changes.
about that. I think it sums it up when you know, I remember very clearly John Key travelling overseas and talking about businesses coming to New Zealand because we're a source of cheap labour. He openly stated that.
Well, you know, they called us Mexicans with cell phones in terms of the film workers
that's
here.
right. Yeah, I've heard that.
Now, hey, it's been a pleasure, and you were really top of the list, and it's taken a while.
I hope you got a lot of the
and I was really stoked that you approached me this time round, because I thought, I won't bloody hassle him this time I'm down, but you knew I was down.
Well, I knew that you'd approached me on a few occasions, and it was just a matter of the timing. It was a matter of the timing. Yeah.
Did you get reggae on the buses?
I haven't got reggae on the buses yet.
Okay.
Maybe that'll come.
It's been a pleasure. Danny, folks, is off to drive tonight. What route are you on?
I'm doing the number 3 to Karori all day.
I started saying the American route. What route are you on?
I'm on the... They do call them routes in New Zealand, actually.
But it's the Americanisation
it's the
of
roots,
our English.
Yeah, we're doing
it's the roots.
I'm doing... it's the roots of everything, isn't it?
Kalobe
to Karori.
My old line. It's been a pleasure, mate. I'll edit this up, and it'll be out in binary before we know it.